Some are here and some are online.
Is this the important meeting?
Hi,
Good. Where shall I sit?
anywhere you like.
There's the sign in and a couple of material documents.
So we're gonna
Okay.
have half, huh? Half here, half there.
Yeah, maybe so. We will get started here momentarily.
I guess I'll sit across from Commissioner Bell there.
All right.
A little more leg room.
If you wanna see the screen, you'll wanna figure out, find a seat where you can see the screen.
Good point.
But we have several screens, so you have options.
So by Rachel Henry.
Zoom in on us.
You're the smartest guy in the room, so.
That's it there.
This is to help people online, right? Mostly what they see on the internet.
It's been forever.
We should have lunch. I'm gonna pick my call.
Yeah, I mean, they can have my people call you.
If you sit on the
We like
side.
this view better. I
I
think a lot of people are gonna be talking instead of having us, I don't know.
Oh, I do, I like this,
Better?
yes,
Okay.
thank you,
But Darcy.
good idea, yeah.
That too.
I think I heard about that, that's exciting.
exciting.
That's exciting.
So excited, we're excited.
Yeah, good,
Good
good.
fit.
Yeah. And Megan's doing an awesome job.
Interesting.
okay.
Round table.
It's nice, I like it.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Right, you too.
Yeah.
Have my glasses, I can't tell who's online.
Okay, well,
That's why I told them, I don't know if they'll work for you.
Go from, at the big screen.
okay, I think we'll call this meeting to order at 2:02 PM. Welcome, everyone. This is the weekly Board of County Commissioners Board Briefing, where we talk about interesting topics, we learn about things, we have discussions that we might not necessarily want to have in our board meetings because we want to take our time to talk about something. So I want to thank everyone who is here in person and everyone who's here online. This is an excellent turnout. I'd like to start the meeting off with introductions. We'll go around the room in person and then I'll call on people on screen. I'm Mary Faith Bell, Tillamook County Commissioner. I'm the chair this year and I'll pass it to Tom.
Tom Steiber, Community Development and Transient Lodging Tax for the county.
Sarah Absher, Community Development.
Nan Devlin, Tillamook Coast Visitors Association.
Bill Sargent, County Council.
Rachel Haggerty, Board of Commissioners, Chief of Staff.
Nathan George, City Manager of Tillamook, across the street.
Doug Olson, Tillamook County Commissioner.
Erin Scar, Tillamook County Commissioner.
Leanne Welch, Interim City Manager for Garibaldi and Mayor of Bay City.
Fabulous. Okay, so online I have Mayor McNeil. You're muted.
I'm muted. Charles McNeely, Mayor of Rockaway Beach.
Welcome. Mayor Stott,
Thank you.
you're muted.
Catherine Stock, Mayor Manzanita.
Welcome. Layla Aman,
Good afternoon, Layla Aman, City Manager, City of Manzanita.
welcome. I have a phone number that ends in 7767.
That's Paul Fournier.
Hey, Paul, welcome. Sheriff Brown,
Sheriff Brown, I'm here. No camera, sorry.
it's all right, welcome. Lori Longfellow,
Hi, Lori Longfellow, City Manager for the City of Nehalem.
Neelam, welcome. And City Manager External. I don't have your
That's
name.
Luke Shepherd.
Oh, Luke.
Yeah, yeah, good afternoon. That's probably me, Luke Shepard, City Manager, City of Rockaway Beach.
All right, Luke, welcome.
Thank you.
And Mayor Findling,
Hey, Katie Finling, from Garibaldi.
welcome. City Planner External, is that Mary?
Yes, hi, Mary Johnson, City Planner for Rockaway.
Welcome, Mary. And Under Sheriff Kelly,
Kelly. Matt Kelly, Sheriff's Office.
welcome. And Treasurer Blanchard,
Good afternoon, everyone. Sean Blanchard, County Treasurer.
Welcome. Isabel Gilda. We don't usually call on Isabel. She's shy and she's probably multitasking.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Isabel Gilda, Executive Assistant, Board of Commissioners Office.
Welcome, Isabel.
Thank you.
And Wes Wooten. You may be muted. We can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. Darn it. Debbie, can you see
What
if
about
he's muted?
There you go.
Okay, try again, please.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, I'm Wes Wooten. I'm the new city manager for Wheeler.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Mayor Kemp. Well, you're muted also.
Must be Cliff.
Okay, and we just got a new meeting guest. What is? That's everybody?
Participants.
group.
That's funny. I've never seen that before.
Somebody has this on group setting.
Okay. All right, well, welcome everyone. I haven't met all of you in person, and so this is delightful to have everybody together here in person and remotely. And we're, as you may know, we're talking today about the idea of increasing transient lodging tax in Tillamook County, and we want to include the cities in the discussion in our early planning. And so I am immediately going to pass this over to County Counsel, Bill Sargent, and have him talk to us about the history of transient lodging tax in Tillamook County, or for Tillamook County, and ordinance 74 and 75. So Bill, take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner Bill, I will. As Rachel has pointed out in her white paper, I'm just gonna kind of follow through that. In November of 2013, the Tillamook County voters passed the Tillamook County transient lodging tax ordinance, and it followed ORS statutes that certain definitions like tourism and tourism-related facilities, what's transient lodging. And since it was passed after July 1st of 2003, it was mandated by statute that the tourism funds that came in had to be allocated 70% to tourism or tourism-related facilities. I'm sure most of you know that. And the other 30% could go to the general fund. As a result, Tillamook County passed by way of a ballot measure in late November 2013 a transient lodging tax ordinance. And it cites the ORS definitions and imposes a 10% tax on transient lodging people, which is collected by the transient lodging tax provider. And in accordance with statute, it allocates 70% to tourism and 30% to the general fund. But specifically, the commissioners who were running the show at the time allocated that 30% to, as you probably remember, Leanne.
I advocated for it.
Yeah, sure. It goes to road maintenance and has always gone to road maintenance since 2013. The main parts of the ordinance that I think are relevant primarily to our discussion today are the two that are listed on the first page of the white paper, and that's, the first one basically says the cities get a credit for 9%, and the practical effect of that means that in the cities, since the county's tax is 10%, we get 1% from the cities, from your transient lodging tax providers. It also says, and it has since its inception, that that will be applied in the cities. And then we passed another ordinance, Ordinance 75, which basically implemented the tax and showed set up Tommy's shop about collection and a tax review committee and some bureaucratic things that need to be taken care of. Page 2 of the handout basically shows how that works. The transient lodging tax provider has to pay 1.5% to the state. And in the case of Tillamook County, 10%. And in the case of all of the cities, no matter what your transient lodging tax ordinance provides, we get 1% there for a total, as you can see, of between 11.5 and 12.5%, because Rockaway Beach and Tillamook are at 12.5%. No, I'm sorry, at 10%, and the rest of the cities are 9%. The next part just basically shows how that works out. I see that most of the cities beat the county to the punch and got their transient lodging tax ordinances implemented long before the 2003 cutoff. But
Except Bay City.
yeah, except for Bay City, you're right. And most of you, if not all of you, have subsequently amended it to increase the tax, but in accordance with the statute, that means you gotta comply with the 70-30 split. So that's how it's worked to this point. And now, I had to figure out, at the request of the Board of Commissioners, whether that would require voter approval, and that sounds pretty simple. And you may remember, Aaron and Mary Faith, everybody, that I struggled with that for a while, and it seemed like it was pretty simple, because the statute says if you're imposing a tax, you have to take it to the voters. Well, I didn't know, maybe we're not really imposing a tax if we increased it, but the bottom line is, I worked with other county councils and with counsel for Orla, and Orla was pretty strong that it had to go to the voters, so I figured that was right, but I agree with it, and that's what I advised the board. And there's a statute that says if we're gonna impose if we're gonna enact an ordinance, in order for it to be effective within the city boundaries, that the voters, the electors either have to approve it, or the city council, puts together some resolution to the effect that we agree to have it apply in our jurisdiction. So that's basically where we are today.
So just to be clear, you do not have to go out for a vote of the voters to increase it.
I think you do. I'm sorry,
You do,
Leanne.
okay,
Yes,
so you do, okay,
if
thank
I
you.
misspoke,
I just wanna make sure I'm clear, Bill.
yeah, oh, no, and it took me a while to be clear on that too, Leanne, it really did. It seems simple, but, that's the prudent thing to do anyway, is, if we're gonna increase the tax, we probably should get the agreement of the people who reside in the jurisdiction. So, yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Commissioner, could I add a little bit to that?
Please.
We have a lot of new people here, and so I wanted to just give a little bit more history. Back in 2012 and 2013, Tillamook County had the worst roads. Leanne will remember, there were 36 out of 36. And all the roads were on an index of 0 to 100 were 70 and up, and Tillamook County was 56 or something, way down there. And so there were 3 of us that got together and talked about both a road bond followed by the lodging tax. And as I remember, it was Commissioner Bill Bartline, who I think was a sitting commissioner, and then former Commissioner David Yamamoto, who hadn't been elected yet, and myself. And we met several times, and we'd been working on the road bond. The road bond passed, I think, in a May election, and that generated $15 million over 2 bond issues. But the story that was told to the voters at the time, if you support the road bond, then we would also fashion some sort of a room tax, because there was none, and get it before the voters with the understanding that the people who are visiting here would pay their share or some portion of their share. And so that went before the voters in November of 2013, and it passed. And the board at the time had made a commitment, if that passed, that 30% of discretionary money minus some expenses on top would stay with the road fund where it's been for the last 10 years. And again, Leanne would remember that all the way through. That is now the second largest funder of the county's road system. So there was a good faith commitment made to the public, and they passed the road bond followed by the transit lodging tax, and that's been in place where it is for the last 10 years. And in that ensuing year, the TLT was managed by the EDC, Economic Development Council, which I happened to be on at the time. And we ended up hiring Nan, who came in after the first year and picked up on the tourism side of it and has been here ever since. So that's a little bit of context how it got here. The good faith commitment to leave the 30% is with the road department, the county road department. And then as council pointed out, there was a second understanding that the cities took and took it up to where the county would get the 1%. So maybe that will help some of our new folks remember the last 10, 12 years.
Yeah, and if I could just follow up to Doug, it's actually in the ordinance itself that the money has to go to maintenance for the road. So, the commission made a promise and it's codified in the ordinance itself, which I'd forgotten, but it is.
So Bill, did you have more that you wanted to cover on that?
No, I think that was just my basic intro, Commissioner Bell. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to talk for a minute about our idea, where we're at now. To be perfectly frank, we started this conversation trying to imagine ways that we can generate revenue for the county. So it may probably come as no surprise to folks in this meeting that the county is looking closely at our budget about opportunities to generate revenue and as well as potentially ways that we can decrease spending. So this is one way that we thought, well, we could increase revenue in this way and probably the voters will support it. And for reasons that probably seem obvious to all of us, but I'll just speak to them briefly. That it seems like our hope is if we increase revenue in this way, we would use the 30% for which we have discretion to support public safety initiatives. And largely, I think voters, Tillamook County residents would recognize that the influx of visitors to our area creates more pressure on our public safety system, and we don't have a way to pay for that. So it just seems fair-minded, actually, to ask visitors to help pay for the public safety services they require when they're here. And we think that voters will understand that and appreciate that we're asking visitors to contribute. So that's the idea. And the increase that we're considering today is 15%. We're not set on that. That's just the number that we're using moving forward until we get better information. So we have researched what other places are charging. We do know that some are higher, some are lower. 15% isn't exactly in the middle. It's a little higher than the middle, but it didn't seem outrageous given our area. And but we're open to talking about that. There are ideas for how we would use the revenue. Is that we would, for one thing, we will continue to allocate the 30% that currently goes to roads will continue to go to roads. So the 30% on the original 10% will continue to go to roads. That was a commitment, as Commissioner Olson said, that a previous Board of Commissioners made, and we all feel like that's where that money belongs. And if we moved it from there, we would be robbing Peter to pay Paul in the sense that the road department would then again be short funded and that would be our fault. So there's no, we're not moving that money out of roads. The additional 30%, so if we moved up to 15%, then we have 30% of the additional, of the new 5. That 30%, we propose spending on public safety. And so by some split, some of it to the sheriff's office, some of it to emergency management, and some of it to the emergency radio system maintenance. And we're not set on those percentages yet, but just, ballparking 80% to the sheriff's office, 10% to emergency management, 10% to radio system maintenance, maybe. And there's also a very exciting opportunity for investing the 70% of the new 5% that would have to be, by statute, have to be spent on tourism facilities or destination management, etc. That's a really exciting opportunity. And we've just started conversations about that. We have a lot of data indicating what the community thinks we should spend that on. We have a list of facilities in Tillamook County for tourism facilities that, hey, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Tourism, Linda Kozlowski just joined us, yay. And we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
So we have a list from Tillamook Coast Visitors Association of tourism facilities. And in particular, we asked them to do an assessment for us of what we have and what we need specific to trailheads, parking, bathrooms, garbage, etc. Like what do we have, what do we need? And we've asked them to prioritize that list. We looked at the work that we did with Future IQ about 4 years ago or 5 years ago. We worked with Future IQ on how to invest TLT money, and the community gave us a lot of great ideas in that process, and some of them were far-fetched, like a water park, but some of them were really good ideas. We're talking about, we've met with Orla now a couple of times. Orla is generally supportive. They did tell us, if you go to the voters and the voters approve this, there's very little we could do about it, which was good information to have. And they are very much interested in partnering with us and talking about the ways that we could invest the 70%. And largely, you probably agree, I hope you agree, largely the 70% investments are a benefit to Tillamook County. And so, there are lots of examples of that. There are lots of examples of that in this room. So we're excited about how we would spend the 70% and also hopeful about how we would invest the 30%. And so I'll just stop there. And I'm going to turn it over to Tommy to talk about what that looks like and how it applies to cities, because the question to you would be, if we move forward with this, the question to our city partners will be, do you want to increase your tax at the same time? Do you, if we move forward, it's my understanding that when this happened, when Tillamook County enacted the transient lodging tax initially, they said that it applies to the entire county, including the cities, and then the cities get a credit for their 9%. And that, I didn't say that right, did I? So I'm just gonna let Tommy. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the way it's set up in the current ordinance is the county tax is 10%, but the cities have their own tax. They all have their own lodging tax now, and each of the cities gets a credit against the county tax based on the amount that they have for the city. So if Tillamook City, for example, has a 10% lodging tax, then they can have a credit against the county tax up to 9%. So the county gets 1%. So to bring that forward to the current discussion about increasing the county tax rate to 15% is the amount that's currently being discussed. If the cities then would each of them could make their own choice of how they want to handle their local lodging tax, if they want to keep it the same or if they want to increase it. If they choose to keep it at the same rate, which is either 9 or 10%, depending on the city, then the county would continue to get the difference between that city rate and the county rate. So 15% for the county minus 10% for using the Tillamook City example, the county would get 5%. So it's basically simply, in simple terms, it's just the difference between the county rate and the city rate.
And doesn't that, what we get now from the cities, we the county, is roughly 7% of the total, I think is what you reported.
About 7% of the total lodging tax collected, yes.
So we get 1% from each city.
That's correct. Under the current levels, yes.
So Tony, so say a city increases it by 2%. So that means the 5 minus 2 is that the county gets 3%?
Exactly.
And would we be on the same ballot measure as you, or does the city have to have its own ballot measure?
Yeah, Mr.
I'm not
Counsel.
I'm not
I'd
sure.
love to piggyback on your ballot
Well,
measure.
because we did it on,
Yeah.
ours last time. It was just one ballot measure that enacted it everywhere.
But I don't know, Leanne, that we could, I don't know if the.
Okay,
if
that
the
would be a
city-
question for us.
Yeah, I don't know if the cities have to even go out for an election.
So
Do you know, Leanne?
we raised ours by 2% and didn't have to go for.
Right,
Yeah.
So
you
we
can,
didn't,
cities can raise it
Through a resolution?
without, through resolution.
Mayor McNeely.
Thank you. Yes, I am off mute. So I'm looking at the proposed scenarios. I'd like to suggest there's actually a fourth scenario. And I suggest this in the context of how important short-term rental properties are to our economic ecosystem in Rockaway Beach. We have been able to drive tourism up because we now have 501 active short-term rental listings, and so they're very important to us. And in that context, we've had no discussion in the city. Nobody suggested that it's time to raise our lodging tax at all. So potentially one scenario to consider is city tax stays at 10%, county tax goes to 15%, but the county tax credit goes to 14%. And so the county continues to get their 1%, but we don't impact the profit of short-term rentals in our city.
There is concern that I've heard from short-term rental agencies that they felt like if it went up to 15%, that they would have to lower the price on their short-term rentals. That may not be true. I don't know. I haven't seen that happen in other towns, but that could have an impact.
Yeah, just basic economics. If the city/county raises the lodging tax, that will impact the profitability of those properties, and they'll either have to suck it up and say, okay, we'll take less money, which I suspect they won't. They'll raise the prices, and that will have a knock-on effect to tourism because the cost of coming here will get higher. It's just supply and demand and pricing mechanisms. So again, there's been no conversation, no interest, no suggestion that it's time in Rockaway Beach to raise lodging tax. And so as mayor, my preference is we continue as we continue. County gets their 1%, we stay at 10%, and you can raise your rate to 15 for unincorporated areas. But I really don't want to impact our short-term rental owners.
Although I do have to say, I just did a family vacation in Sun River and I ended up renting 3 short-term rentals. They were $500 a night, and I didn't even care what the taxes was. Didn't even look at it. That was not even part of what I was thinking of.
Could I speak?
Please.
So, I guess a couple of things, and I don't know if they're all relevant for this meeting, but one, and maybe not for today, but I'd like to understand if there are any other viable revenue options for the county, or if this is it. Because if this is it, then we look at it in a different way. I'm assuming it kind of is, but nobody has really said that. So is that the case? This is it on the revenue side, and then anything else the county would need to do would have to be on the other side of the balance sheet, as Doug is always reminding us.
Well, this
that correct?
this may be the most immediate opportunity. There are some other longer term opportunities, but this seems like low hanging fruit, relatively speaking.
Okay, I would echo the concern that Charles has raised. I'm not going to weigh in and would not weigh in as mayor. I mean, we've got a council, the council looks at that together. There's been no, but to be just accurate, there's been no discussion about raising that rate recently. So we would have to have a serious sit down and look at that and see if that was viable for the city or not. I personally would love to see the county get past the point of anecdotal talk about rates. I appreciate Leanne's story, and I appreciate the fact that we get sort of general feelings from people who run the business, but those people are always going to tell you that that's going to be too much. So I've raised this before, but not formally, and I'm just wondering, is there any way we can get some good price sensitivity analysis, some analytical work done that's more than just applying a percentage rate to a current number, assuming the number doesn't go down, doesn't take into account what the counties or the I guess the places that are competing for our people for short-term rentals, just what the effect would be. So that's a request. I'm sure it can't be really honored in this meeting, but I really hope if this is going to be serious work, and it sounds like it is, that we could get some better analysis out there for us to look at and consider, because Charles raises a good point. So those are my two comments and observations.
Thank you. Well, you both raise excellent points, and yes, we will get more data as it is available. We did ask Jason Brandt, who's the director of Oregon Restaurant Lodging Association, his experience or what he knew about data about raising rates and how it impacts businesses, because we don't want to negatively impact the visitorship. You know, we don't want to negatively impact, for example, the owners, short-term rental owners. We don't imagine that any increase would come out of the pockets of short-term rental owners. We imagined that they would add an increase to what they're charging people, and there's lots of anecdotal evidence about that. You're absolutely right. But so a couple points that Jason Brandt made to us that I thought were really useful was he said, where it matters is in places that have conventions, in urban areas and places that have conventions, the people who are booking conventions will shop around for the lowest tax rate. So it would absolutely matter there, because cities that have higher tax rates, it's going to cost more for them to book a convention, for example. So we don't have that here. And he also talked about being right-sized in the sense that that there are places on the coast that have luxury lodging destinations, and that we maybe only have a couple of those, and we don't want to be priced. Oh, there we go. I lost my screen there for a second. We don't want to be priced considerably higher than other communities that have luxury destinations. So that was a good point that we hadn't considered. But we don't yet have any hard and fast data on, if we increase by 5%, how would that impact people's choice to come here? We can keep looking for that. So, yeah, go ahead.
Commissioner Bell, Paul Fournier, Commissioner of West Window, if I can chime in here. Having been a part of those Orla meetings with you as well, is one of the things I think the cities have a right to their own autonomy and what they decide they want to tax their local short-term rentals. One of the things that I don't want to get lost here is the biggest beneficiary of this is actually the tourism industry. The 70%, because I hear complaints from people in ETARs who run STRs, what's the county doing to promote tourism? And one of the things about this, raising this, is the majority of the money will go into that 70%, which is what Jason spoke of. And that's one part of this process. I think absolutely we should look at, is there a number where people get turned away? But also, if we build a convention center, what does that change? If we invest into the fairgrounds, if we do these big capital investments, I just don't want that getting lost, that we're just asking a few short-term rental people, managers, to raise their rates, and no one's going to come anymore to the Oregon coast, which I find, I don't believe that. But I think the important part is part of this process is we have to have that 70%. We have to have exciting projects that we're investing in our county parks, investing in other short-term rental properties, whether it's owned by the county and we're making the money off it, or it's owned by private industry and we partner with them. I'm sitting in a campground in Idaho right now, waterfront. I paid $57 a night for this. I have no idea what the tax is. I didn't care. I booked it. And I think that's a big part of this. But I just want to make sure that we're talking about the biggest beneficiary is going to be the DMOs and the industry. And I think Orla made it very clear, and I think it's very important for us to consider what that investment is too. I just want to throw that out there so we don't get lost in it's just the mom and pop short-term rental people that are getting the bill. This should increase our amenities, put mountain bike trails, and put other things that keep people in the county to spend money here, which helps everybody from the bottom up. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Mayor Findling.
Perfect, thank you. So I just wanted to echo a little bit of Charles and what was said, just for more data, if possible. Anecdotally from my side, when I worked in Portland and had to get an Airbnb overnight, I 100% checked every tax rate because I don't have the money to pay attention. Like, I actually have to pay attention to those tax rates. So I was hopping counties and hopping cities, and the difference in what it costs per night could be $100. And so when I'm looking at it, it's just like, wow, okay, I'm gonna go about 10 minutes further out. So I think that people will actually pay attention to the tax rate as far as what's getting added to their Airbnb. But at the same time, if the data says it's intelligent to do, then I think looking at data helps fuel a lot of our thoughts, and also helps us go to councils to present a more valid argument, or one more valid thing one way or another. Because I know the first thing I'll be asked is, what does the data say?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I think you were talking about Portland, and in our research, I think we discovered that Portland's rate was 22%. So it's very high. And you're absolutely right. People do pay attention to that. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, I've looked at it in Eugene, all across the state, we've actually looked at the different prices and made decisions accordingly. But
Sure.
tighter budgets do that.
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, we have these three proposed scenarios, and to Mayor McNeely's point, there could be other scenarios. We're not limited to these three. When this was passed in the first place, it was passed, now I'm repeating myself, for the entire county. And there's the possibility that we could increase it in unincorporated Tillamook County and just leave the cities as is. I think I do recognize that this is a brand new conversation, and it may be the first time you seriously thought about it. It might be beneficial to the cities to look at what could be generated for your city in a raise, and think about how that could be useful to you or not. It was eye-opening to us, is why I say that. When Tommy ran the numbers for us on what would 2% look like, 3%, 5%, 10%, et cetera. And so that was very useful to us. So, but indeed, you know, we're not set in how we're going to proceed. What we're set in is that we want you to be part of this conversation, because we consider the cities our partners, and we don't want to do something that catches you unawares. We don't wanna do something that impacts you if you don't want that. So this is where we're at in the conversation. We're just trying to figure out how to work with you moving forward. Nathan,
May I
please.
speak?
Yeah.
Thank you. One question first before I speak. Am I allowed to bring up other ideas for revenue in this meeting, or is that not appropriate because we're only talking about the TLT?
Well, let's put that in a parking lot, because I'm totally interested in your ideas, but I think for this, we should stick to this.
That's fine. I just
Can I
want to
add
clarify.
one thing to that, if you've read the paper, the county is going through an exercise over the next months, and we have a list of, I think, of 54 actions. Some of them increase revenue, some of them go the other way. And some of them are quite dramatic, like going to a 4-day work week and things like that. All of that is currently on the table. So we're looking at both revenue and expenditures. And if you've got some bright ideas, it would be number 55. We need to visit for sure, because we have a crunch like many of our cities and others do across Oregon, and Washington County's had a terrible time. They just had a giant layoff down in Curry County, I think, and so we're in that same boat. So that, yes, we'd be very interested in hearing that conversation, but today it's more about this one, but wherever you want to go, Madam Chair.
Nathan.
Thank you. Yes, I do. In fact, I had spent 3 hours with my council going over ideas for revenue back in January. So just in emphasizing the different points been made, I want to state my little story on that part, and then the rest will be more data driven a little bit. But when I look at Airbnbs, which I look at a lot, the biggest thing I've always noticed is a cleaning fee. If you take a look at it, you got your taxes and you got your breakdown, and the big chunk is the cleaning fee. And some places will charge $15 and some people will charge $100 a night. That's the big one. And we're not charging cleaning fees here, so. But what I wanted to say is that I wanted to say thank you to the county, first of all, for bringing this forward to all the cities. I think this is really important that we're trying to work together on this. The city, we have significant revenue issues. And you think about it, I used to work for Multnomah County. I was a payroll manager. We ran $1.1 million every other week in payroll. And they have the smallest geographical, Multnomah County is the smallest geographical. They have sufficient funding. We don't have sufficient funding. Think about the county. I think about, we don't really take care of Highway 6, but all the county roads that you have a lot. Our county is huge compared to the amount of population we have. So I think it's really important to put some ideas together. First of all, I want to say that if the counties and cities could come together on this and work together, I think it'd be huge, because we would strengthen the whole county, and that way people come into our county. They come for specific reasons. They come for Pacific City, they come for Netarts, they come for Oceanside. And let's not forget, we have the second most visited attraction in the state, which is the Creamery. The first being, of course, the outlet mall, I think in Woodland, statistically. But we do have some really good things that bring people here, and pushing that, I shouldn't say pushing, but helping show that when tourists come, when I go visit someone, I'm gonna save up my money, I'm gonna get ready to go visit somewhere and spend money in that area. You know, when I'm living somewhere, it's different. So I think really focusing on those people coming to spend. The last thing I want to say is the city of Tillamook has significant revenue issues. And I'm going to be proposing, I'll be a strong advocate of this because this is really important to us. And I'm also going to be advocating a lot of other things. Now, I can't speak on behalf of the council. Council makes the decision, not I. But I will be absolutely advocating this and advocating many other ideas too. So I just want to stay for the city of Tillamook, though I do not speak on behalf of the council. I will speak on behalf of myself, on behalf of staff, that we will be advocating. We are significantly, we have cut, I shouldn't say we have cut a lot of expenditures, we haven't let cut, but we have streamlined and organized and made lean, and we are doing twice as much work as we used to do with the same people. It's unbelievable. We have 10 sworn officers and we're taking 1,100 calls a month. I mean, it's just unbelievable when we run 24/7 with 10 officers, and one of those is our chief and then 2 sergeants who are our leadership. So I think this whole county is doing a lot of lean things. All of our cities, we're small, we have limited resources and staff, but working together to support our whole county, I think would be critical. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Our thought about this is that a high tide floats all boats. You know, so there's it's certainly not our intention to hurt anyone or any city or anything. Or our thought was that that this could potentially benefit everyone. But that's not to say that, you know, if your city doesn't want to be included, we couldn't figure out how to do that.
Please include us.
Catherine.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll wait if there are any other cities that want to weigh in. I don't want to be
Go ahead, Catherine.
overdoing it. Okay, so here's another angle for future discussion. I think one of the things that could be certainly really useful would be for the cities, city leadership, to get and I'm thinking out loud here, so be patient with me while I do that, please. The piece of this that most people aren't aware of yet, probably the commissioners are the ones that are closest to it, will be if we don't have a revenue increase, and if this is the county's only shot at that, you know, for the foreseeable future, if we don't have that increase, as county services are decreased or go away altogether, I mean, that does have an impact on us as cities. I mean, it's sort of obvious, but I'll say it. I depend on in Manzanita county services for some things. So if you're thinking about how you want to pitch this, or I don't want to say promote, but persuasively, you know, talk to people about why this is necessary, I think getting some, and I know you're working on it, but getting some information out about what the consequences would be of the county not doing an increase would be important to people. And I know that's a challenge, and I know you've got, and you're stepping up certainly to the plate to do that work on budgets in a way that you haven't, at least as I understand it, in a way that you haven't done in recent years, just because of the urgency for next year. So there's also something in here about how the county services would or would not be affected if we're not able to, if you are not able to, or the city doesn't increase their current rate. Sort of like, you know, where do those services meet people who happen to live in an incorporated city, get some of their services from the city, but certainly not all of them. And I'm thinking particularly in terms of law enforcement. On that, we have a staffed police force. That's unusual in the county. So I don't know if that would change or shift how the conversation went for other cities based on where the additional revenue would be directed, namely law enforcement in this case.
Thank you. It's a really good point. Yeah, it's an excellent point. Luke.
All right, thank you. And just to mirror Nathan, it's really nice that you've invited us to the table on this conversation. And I understand the need for revenue, and I'm going to assume this is going to go to the voters next year. I can't see a scenario where the county doesn't give this a shot. And so I want to go back to the proposed scenarios here. You know, on page 3 of the board briefing. You know, I think the scenario on the right side of the table with the 14% credit, you know, I think that's something we can start a conversation over. Maybe there are other scenarios, but I'm pretty sure, and I don't speak for the other cities here, but option 1 and option 2 with the 9% credits, you know, I would love to see the county take those off this table. Those are completely you know, we cannot support those at all. You know, a city will never support that in either of those first 2 options. And I just want to be clear about that. You know, we need the revenue from the STRs that operate in our city to provide the services that they create the demand for in our city limits. And I think there may be other scenarios we could look at, but really those 2, in my opinion, you know, really I'd like to see those removed.
Thank you, Luke. As would I. You know, I don't know if it's clear because this table is complicated to me, and it had to be explained to me about 3 times. That the 9%, what that represents is if we go up to 15%, and we don't, and the cities don't go up also, the 9% is what's currently happening. So if we went up and the cities didn't also go up, then we would collect the 1% we get now plus the 5%. That's what that means. So that doesn't benefit you, you're right. You would continue to get what you get now, but it doesn't benefit the cities, and that's why I don't support those options. To my way of thinking, and I'm one of 3 commissioners, if moving forward with this, I just said, I want this to float all of our boats. And so I would want the cities to get the increase and the county to stay at 1%. So that's my preference, but I'm speaking for myself only. Leanne.
I just wanna make sure I understand what you just said. So if it goes up to 15% and the cities decide to do a 5%, then you actually just get the 1% and the cities actually get the whole.
Right.
But that would not be in the spirit of working together.
Well, we'd get 1% of, we'd get 1% of 15. So we're currently getting 1% of 10. So we'd get 1% of 15. So it's still a little more to us, but it's considerably more to the cities.
It's another 0.5%.
No, you get 1% of the rental rate. Whatever it's $100 a night, you still get $1, whether it's 15% or not. I think, if my math is correct.
So the other thing that I wanted to just let you know is the League of Oregon Cities sent out their 25-26 legislative priorities for cities to vote on their top 5. And in that 23 is to make the transient lodging tax more flexible. We know it hasn't gone anywhere historically from Orla, but I think the cities want to take another run at it. And I did a dot exercise yesterday with some of our citizens, and that got dots on it because that's revenue
That's
to the
huge,
city.
that's huge.
That's
It is
in
a
our budget roundtable ideas.
Yeah.
AOC is also in that conversation. And I've had conversations with Representative Javity, who is interested in starting with a study bill, looking at recreational communities to try to build a case for the legislature to understand and think about this differently, and hopefully Orla to think about this differently potentially. So I think there is a movement afoot. I don't think it's gonna be fast, but I think there are a lot of people that are lobbyists that are playing in that field on the behalf of those of us who need this.
Oh my. Hi. Come on in. This is our next agenda item.
Oh, okay, we're all like, who's here? We have you guys on
About
the,
TLT.
yeah, I think we have you guys on our agenda for 3:30.
Right, do you want us to wait outside?
You're welcome to wait in here, but we're talking about TLT tax, so it's entirely up to you.
We can do whatever you guys want us to do.
This is a public meeting, you're welcome to stay.
There's plenty of room.
Let's
2:53.
We've learned something.
Sorry for interrupting.
2:53.
So, on the TLT tax on this last option, does the city have flexibility, so if we have the opportunity to do 14%, but say we just want to add 1 additional percent? Is there flexibility for the cities in that percentage?
Well, I think we're making this up as we go, so I don't know how much flexibility we have. I think we should. Bill, do you have an opinion on that?
I really think that would be difficult to do. To say like maybe in Manzanita, we get 2%
Yeah.
for following you, and in Garibaldi, we get 1%, and
So it'd be difficult to administer?
I think, but
Okay.
I'm not saying.
So if it's 14%, that means the cities have to do 14%?
No, you get, if the county goes to 15 and you got a 14% credit, that's, everything would stay the same in your city, we'd just get 1% like we've always gotten from the city.
But also, the language is very confusing about the credit. We're also toying with the idea of just eliminating the credit wording and just saying county gets 1%.
Right.
Ah, okay, that would
just
be a
make all
lot
this simpler.
easier,
Right.
right.
I think part of the question was exactly to have the conversation we're having today, which is, are cities considering it? To the point that someone asked about, you mean we wouldn't have to do our own ballot measure or resolution because the county would do all that for us? So I think there's a lot of ways to go about it, to think about it, and we just wanted to take the pulse. Do cities want to kind of come with us, and would this make it easier for you all? Or do you have separate needs and plans, which obviously we're hearing today, and maybe that 1% approach would be a better approach, where the rates are not tied together, but that means you would have to do it in your own city for your own rate separate from us, and we would simply put on top of it the 1% that we would request.
So I'd like to go back to what Mayor Stock said, is, you know, as mayor, I don't speak for our council. So what I'd like to do is go back and have a discussion with our council. What is the timing? Are you looking at November, May of 25?
May 25.
You're looking at May, so that gives us an opportunity to go back and work with our cities and our councils. Because I can't give you an answer today,
Sure.
speaking for my council.
Yeah, and we didn't expect that.
No.
Okay, yeah.
So Leanne, the timeline, everyone, the timeline is on the bottom of page 3. Our goal is to have our approach buttoned up by the end of the year, so we can draft the ordinance language that needs to be done and adopted, hearings and all of that before the election. So we're looking at ordinance adoption in January, preparing for the election, February, March, and then the May election.
Who is the main staff contact? So like if we wanna have you join us for a discussion at one of our city council meetings, who would that, is that Tommy or is that Rachel or is that
That was gonna be my question.
That's a great question.
Well, I'm the commissioner contact. I'd be happy to come and talk about it. Yeah, yeah, we haven't entirely dumped this on Rachel's plate yet, although we'd probably like.
Cause it would be helpful if we have this, that there'll be questions that we can't answer, and so it'd be really nice to have one of you guys there.
Yeah.
Let me give you another, just my opinion. Some of you know I was in the business for 23 years. I owned a couple of motels in Pacific City. And I think there are two sides, and I think Sarah will back me up. Maybe it's really not two sides, there's two factions. One is the commercial properties that are lodging, motels, hotels, and Pacific City has, I don't know, 5 or 6, or all over Rockaway. I think those people look at it differently than the short-term rentals. The short-term rentals are typically a family, maybe they own 2 or 3, but it's not a big business, and it's usually a secondary business to whatever they're doing elsewhere. And for many of them, and I've been to quite a number of the meetings now at Pacific City and Nescoin, and Sarah's been to them all over the county, is they're very emotional, intensely in the business, more so than someone who is a dispassionate third-party owner or a corporate owner or something like that. So I think we have to keep in mind that there's really two approaches that they will take. My personal opinion is the motels and hotels, this is not a big deal to them. They'll pass it along. If it's $100 a night, it's still $100 a night, and whatever the government wants, they'll add it in and people will probably pay it. The other people will be discouraged and not know how to handle it, or they'll handle it differently. They'll be frightened, and I think we have to recognize that going into this. And in some areas, now like down in South County, how many are there, Sarah, in Pacific City?
In Pacific City, there's close to putting me on the spot. 400?
I'm gonna say it's somewhere between 400 and 500,
Yeah.
and a lot, and you just heard Rockaway has 500. So this, to me, they're two totally separate factions, and we need to keep that in mind because you're dealing with corporate, so to speak, not always, I mean, they're small businesses too, but then you're dealing with individual families who this is their personal asset. And they're gonna view this entirely different. Some of them it's cost of doing business, others, it's can they make it go?
Right.
And we don't wanna lose sight of that.
I agree, Commissioner. And I think that comes down to messaging and education and making sure that we're listening to them and we're hearing from them.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll call on Layla and then Mayor McNeely.
Thank you. So I wanted to go back to something that Mayor Stock said and just elaborate a little further, which is I do think for both the county and for the cities that we do need more analytical information about this. And just even the point that was just raised just now, that there is price sensitivity differences between hotels versus short-term rentals. In a community like Manzanita, we have 260 short-term rentals. Those are all independently owned because our ordinance only allows for one owner of a STR. And I think it's really critical that we look at what the potential impact of raising the tax, more than 50% will have on pricing, because that will impact, it could impact, I will not say with any definitive answer here that it will, but it could impact the overall revenue. So if they have to charge lower rates and a higher tax in order to maintain the same type of occupancy, that could have an impact on revenue for us. In a city that relies, 60% of our general fund comes from TLT. So in other larger cities in the county, that might not be the case, but for us, it's a big deal. So I think I just want to emphasize that I think in order for this to be successful, I know certainly that my council would be asking me for that kind of data before they would make an informed decision about whether or not to raise the tax or not. That really is something I think would be, in my mind, a really important next step for the county to take, to both look at doing it countywide, including the incorporated cities, and then perhaps doing an analysis that excludes the incorporated cities to see what that difference looks like, so that you can also make your best estimation of what your revenue projections should be. Because I did want to ask one clarifying question, which is that the revenue projections that you've shown here, does that assume that the county is only getting 1%, or does that assume that the county is getting the 6% and that the cities are static in their TLT? So thank you.
Thank you. So Tommy, can you answer Leila's question? The revenue projections, are those based on us, the county collecting 1%? I think they are.
Yes, that would assume a continuation of the 1% that the county currently receives.
Okay, Mayor McNeely.
Thank you. So a couple of contextual things just to help you understand Rockaway Beach and where we're at. Earlier this year, you may know or you may not know, we went through a rather contentious process to put a cap on the number of short-term rental businesses in our community. As unfortunately, there was a lot of trash talk out on social media, a lot of bad information, and it created, I think, some bad blood between the city government and that industry. And so something that's very important for me is to fix that, to mend that and make sure that they understand that we love short-term rentals. We understand how valuable they are to our community, and that we want to partner with them to make sure we have enough tourist housing in our communities to support our vibrant tourist economy. So that's one. And then two, and many of you may also know, we contract with the Sheriff's Department to provide policing for Rockaway Beach. So we're currently writing a check periodically to the Sheriff's Department in support of those Rockaway Beach patrol officers. So we have a monetary connection with the Sheriff's Office here in Rockaway Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else?
I guess the question that I have, I've heard a lot about needing more data. So, what kind of data are you guys looking for that will help us cities make decisions?
Looking like a good engineer.
Yeah, amen.
I would have the cities reach out to their STR owners or the STR agencies and get their feedback.
And then I had asked you if there was any industry studies that were out there that sort of showed the impacts of increasing taxes, and there really were not any that you were able to put your hands on.
There weren't, but there are examples of areas that raised their taxes pretty significantly, like Hood River. Hood River is at 16%, and their room rates went up as well.
How's their occupancy been? Do we know if that was
better than ours?
Okay.
It is. They're a heavier tourist or visitor center, but it hasn't hurt them. Portland is 22 to 24 plus. Hotels will put amenity fees on top of that. they'll charge $35 for parking. And you can get a $200 room that'll be $310 when you check out.
And no free breakfast.
Yeah. So it just, it depends. When I travel, I just wanna go, relax, and I don't, like you said, I don't look at the tax. It's probably pretty high, but you know, you wanna get away.
And I can understand Mayor Findling's point of view, so I certainly can see that. However, what I'm saying is if the county's gonna move forward, including the cities, if you do, it behooves the cities to increase our taxes or it all goes to the county and the cities actually don't benefit at all. And so, you know, so really trying to wrap our arms around all this about what, you know, when are you gonna make a decision based on what the cities are gonna do, or are you gonna make a decision based on what the county needs?
Well,
Commissioner Bell,
Paul,
Paul Fournier. Yeah, Paul, I just make a comment. I love hearing the city's input. One of the things I would just remind Rockaway and Manzanita is, had the county prior to the 70-30 TLT tax been enacted, had we actually had our own 10%, this probably wouldn't even be on the back, it wouldn't even be consideration. The fact is we didn't do it. And so now, for the same reasons that you don't want to raise your local TLT, which I agree with, I think I agree with Commissioner Bell that we need to find a solution where nobody's hurting from this. I just want to make that clear that we get 30%. You guys get 100% because you were smart enough to get that TLT enacted before the 70-30 came into effect. So we are behind the eight ball. We've been kicking the can down the street, and we're trying to catch up, and we don't want to hurt you. So I wanted to make sure publicly that I agree with Commissioner Bell that whatever happens here, and this is a long discussion, we have a long time to talk about this, and I agree with the need for data, that no industry should be hurt because of this. But I just wanted to put that out there that the reason this is it's a different scenario than if the county were collecting the whole 10%. This probably wouldn't be an issue. That's all. Thank you.
thank you.
Right, but that doesn't reflect where we are. So looking where we are and forward, I think without probably solving it in this meeting, somebody, and maybe Aaron, you're the one to take the point with staff or state resources or somebody who can get a straightforward quantitative analysis of this. That's all. And I can sit and we could sit and talk to all of our owners, and I can almost guarantee you 98% of those people will say it'll be a harm and the market can't take it and they're already blah, blah, blah. That's not going to help us. That's anecdotal. We can talk with people, but certainly that's the reaction we're going to get. I'm looking at something that is, to keep coming back to the word analytical, but something that gives us some numbers and some kind of scenarios about what to expect in terms of price sensitivity. And I asked that on the county's behalf. You're going to need that at some point too, and we're all going to need that. So it's not unreasonable, and I don't hear us really solving that in the meeting. So I think that's an important follow-up, that we get past just the things that have happened thus far, and I don't think are enough. So, not to be rude, I'm just trying to be straightforward about this, because we're all in this boat together in the county. I mean, I am all for all ships rise together, and if we can craft a way to do that, great, but I won't do it or support it based on the kind of sort of data and stories that we've heard in the meeting this morning. That's just not enough.
Thank you. I think we would all like to have more data, and that's desirable, and we'll continue to look for it. Sheriff Brown?
So I'll just give my 2 cents, and I want to be respectful to the mayors from Rockaway and Manzanita, how they haven't had discussions. I have an observation / opinion. I have a question as well. Well, a couple of questions, but I'm very respectful and understanding that about the analyzing as Catherine is saying about but I guess I don't understand what type of analysis that you're specifically looking for or where you would actually get that. aside from like what they were talking about with Hood River, where they increased theirs, but they don't seem to have occupancy issues. I can sit here and tell you that this 4th of July weekend that we had, despite inflation, despite generalized price increases, you know, that it was probably the most tourists I've ever seen in our county. Rockaway, you might be able to speak to that. Manzanita, you may be able to speak to that as well if you guys had the same level of tourism increase. COVID didn't stop tourists coming through, so I don't venture in any way, shape, or form that this would actually hinder tourism. Just also on a side note, I just randomly within 2 minutes, quote unquote, booked a beach rental in Pacific City, first one I came across. And for a 3-night stay, they charge $187 in taxes for a 3-night stay. The service fee is $239 and the host fee is $303. So that's almost what, 3 times what the taxes are, and people are still paying those in our Airbnbs or Verbos are being booked. So now those are not very specific analytical documentation or anything to your point, Catherine, and I'm assuming that you probably want something more formal than that, but just on its surface, my opinion is based on COVID, based on what I saw this last weekend with inflation, based on what I can see on these sites, tourism is not going to slow down in Tillamook County, even if we increase it. The other thing is if we increase to 15%, all we're talking is $5 more for every $100 spent. And that's on top of the 10 that's already being spent, So my opinion is that tourists are not going to balk at it, and they're not going to slow down coming to the coast at all. And all it does is it just increases what the tourists should be paying their fair share of for the services that they're getting, like law enforcement, like fire, like garbage, like bathrooms, things of that nature. So all that being said, again, that's my opinion, my observation. My question is, can the city of Rockaway, can the city of Manzanita, can the city of Tillamook kind of do their own thing while we do our own thing? Or do we not get to move forward if the city of Rockaway doesn't move forward increasing as well? That's my question. Can they independently choose to not increase and we continue to increase? And I agree that we should leave our cut at 1%. We should not be increasing and taking from them any more than what we currently are. That's my question. So I don't know if anybody has that answer.
Yeah, I do, Sheriff Brown. We can plunge ahead solo if necessary to enact whatever increase the commissioners ultimately determine to be, in their best interest. And the commissioners ultimately are gonna have to figure out how you're gonna work around the city, if you're gonna leave it at 1% or, make it some difference. But it seems like at least consensus that the board is thinking more along the lines of just leaving it the way it is at 1%, one way or another. I don't, be mine and Rachel's role to try to wordsmith that, but that seems to be where we are. But certainly, Sheriff Brown, the board can forge ahead independent of the county, of the cities. They're just trying to bring them into the conversation.
Leanne.
Well, and it doesn't have to be independent, right? Like they can still join on and just choose to not increase their TLT tax, right?
Sure.
Because it sounds like Tillamook is very interested in possibly increasing. Rockaway, Manzanita, would have to take it to their counselors, so they're not able to make a decision, which then naturally, I don't know about Wheeler, Bay City, those other cities, but we could still work together with them. But and that was my question, which it sounds like it's been answered. Can they choose not to increase, and then we do choose to increase, and then we still just have that partnership where we're taking the 1%?
Presumably, yes. And I'll call on Leanne next.
So one of the things I really appreciate what you guys are doing is Nan and I have had this discussion more than once. The increase in tourism puts a burden on our law enforcement, our fire departments, all of our EMS. We have more access. The sirens were all weekend this weekend. And so what I really like about your proposal is that you are saying where you want to put that money. And I think that it's going to be a good sell to have it towards emergency responders, fire in it. With that, well, you don't have fire districts, they're a special district that belong to the cities, but I mean, this is what we're seeing as a result of tourism. We've had this conversation more than once.
Parks too, public works,
Yeah.
all kinds.
Roads already get 30%, so.
Yeah, but we all know that's not enough. So there's,
All of it.
there's a lot of need all the way around. Yeah.
If I
Hey,
may,
so we're not saying we're not on board with this. I am simply saying there's information that's needed, and I'm just going to say it one more time, and it's probably one time too many for some people on the call, but I'm going to say it again. If tourism continues to be a big part of the economy for the county, and it certainly is for our city. Layla, our city manager, talked through the impact of that. We have got to do a better job at the county of getting a model in place so you can run this analysis and do it regularly. Look for what is happening in city, look for trends. If you haven't hired an economist to do this work for the county yet, it's more than time to do it. This work is beyond kind of regular staff level work that I think normally happens in all the counties. We need some help to get that analysis done. It would be maybe starting from zero, or not quite zero, but starting from pretty far down the ladder for the county to do it. You're just going to need to hire somebody. So let's just get that done, invest in that. And then you've got the good analytics and the data, and we can take the anecdotal, heartfelt things that all feel true to us, match it up to the numbers, and have a much stronger case for the voters, and have a much stronger case for the cities to be able to convince or work with our council and citizens to support the county as well, which we are a part of.
Thank you.
Columnist Welch.
I appreciate so much all the conversation. I just wanna make sure that it's really very clear that the intention of the commissioners was to do with the cities, not to the cities at any level. Just in case there's any sense, I feel like there may have been some sense at different points during this meeting that we were just gonna run everybody with 15%. But it's definitely intention to do with, not to. And I think there's a lot of great information that you all have shared that I don't think was on our list if we had made our pros and cons and had that laid out. There are things that I've learned today that I know I wouldn't have put on that list, so I really do appreciate that. I think to your point, Mayor Stock, and I'm looking at Nan on this one, when you talk about that kind of an analysis, is there a fairly standard industry type analysis? I know we look at the amount of transient lodging tax collected. Is there a fairly standard industry analysis we might use to get to what Mayor Stock is talking about?
On a countywide basis, there's the Dean Runyon report, and that breaks it down by industry sectors and what people spend. And in this last year in Tillamook County, visitors spent close to $280 some million in direct spending. And that direct spending goes to hotels, restaurants, attractions, activities, grocery stores, things like that. So it's grown a lot. And then the indirect spending are like, plumbers for the hotels, or, landscaping, or HVAC, or whatever. So there's indirect and direct. So it's big, but that's one, but we can probably talk to Orla and see what they've got.
Because I think, Mayor Stock, I'm not opposed to what you suggest. I really just don't know that I understand what exactly you're suggesting we measure, or what we would measure the change in. So I think you have something in mind that I'm not sure what it is, and we don't necessarily have to flesh it out in this meeting. We can get that information and, with Nan, try to figure out what exactly it is that is the appropriate measure to base the decision making on.
Well, perhaps Layla and I could take this offline with you, Commissioner Scar. We'll plan for something and then talk it through more specifically.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you.
Do you mind if I address one other thing? Over the years, I've talked to Orla a lot, attend their meetings and things, and there always comes up that question about how can we adjust that 70-30?
Yep.
How can you be flexible? And I've always said it should be at least more flexible in rural areas. And they have said to me a couple of times, if the majority of the counties in the state want that Orla would support it. But it's always usually a one-off that comes, to the state legislature with this idea. And they haven't gotten a consensus from around the state. So Orla fights it, tries to keep it at 70-30 because that's what's in state law. But if there was consensus.
Well, and that's where LOC and AOC, I mean, it's becoming more and more important to the cities and the counties because we're all having revenue shortages and we've been investing heavily for a decade now in tourism, related facilities. So now we need fire and police to help with the.
And I think that's true everywhere in
So,
rural.
and you said a majority, is that a majority of counties by number or by population or
I
by
don't know.
tourism or?
It's gonna be votes in the legislature at the end of
Yes.
the day.
Yeah.
So that can mean that everyone could agree except for Multnomah, Marion, Clackamas, and Washington, and Lane, and those
Done.
5 counties could stop the other 31 in a heartbeat.
I understand that.
Absolutely.
Unless it's different by rural
Mhm.
counties.
Well, I've always
Rural
thought
counties,
if
I
you
think
took the Oregon coast, which is the tourism driver for Oregon, and maybe Deschutes County or somewhere else. Now, boy, it seems like the legislature would pay attention to that, but I've been, as you know, Nan, I've been trying to work through the side door on that for years and you run into a brick wall so far.
And I think Representative Javity's approach at this point of a study bill is probably going to be something where it's looking at some of that, right? Where is the sweet spot that maybe this change would be made? Is it a majority of counties? Is it rural counties? Is it recreation-based counties? Where can we really show that this is more needed for infrastructure than for promotion? Because there are counties who still very much
All promotion.
and that's where they want
Most
it.
of North or Clatsop County is all promotion. Because they only have a 1% county tax there that was implemented, 3 years ago or something? It's each city has their lodging tax and it is spent on promotion. Lincoln City does too. So.
Mayor McNeely.
Yes, thank you. One more thought is, and I was appreciated Sheriff Josh Brown's comments, but and of course I'm all in for the data as Mayor Stock has talked about, but I'd be interested in understanding what's the effect on spend in our merchants and restaurants if the rental rates go up. In other words, people have to spend a larger chunk of their vacation budget on lodging. How is that going to affect the spend in our merchants and restaurants? Because if it looks like it's going to drive the spend down, then that's not a good thing for our economies.
That's a good question, thank you. Tommy.
Just one thing that I'm thinking as we talk about having the county held at 1% across the board. I don't know, and this would be for county council to determine, but there could be a problem maybe with the county as a result of that, having more than one tax rate. So I think we would have to, when it was originally set up, the county was 10% across the board with exemptions for local lodging taxes. And I don't know if it's possible legally to have a different rate for the county to compensate for different rates in the cities, so.
Good question. Another question for you, Bill.
Yeah.
We may begin to understand why the 9% credit was what was chosen.
Okay, well, I'm gonna offer a time check. It's 3:24. I'm very grateful for this conversation. We do have folks here to make a different presentation to us at 3:30. So is there anything else for the good of the order?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thanks to everyone truly for
Thank you.
participating, for thinking through this with us, and more to come. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Please, our paper, a real challenge.
You know, and I would
To be leaving the meeting. Hi, Bill, it's always good to see you.
I will need to send
Brad's
you.
getting small.
How are you?
Yes, I do,
Sunday-
Sundays are
Sunday-
better, aren't they?
So-
Yeah, anytime after.
right, because also it's surprising. This might be the first time people.
Yeah, I just, and if the county goes up, it would be a competitive advantage for the cities.
Yes, Nan, we met years ago.
How you doing?
And I thought, oh,
And I would be shocked.
We're still here.
it's 7 years.
So it's like giving them.
Isn't that amazing?
So give me a chance. And analyze.
Yes, for sure, yeah. Yeah, I just don't think, I think this is relatively new. I'm not sure those analytics exist, but if they do, we'll find out.
Central board, I don't even.
Can I do what? Yes, yeah.
I miss you too.
Unfair question.
got the PowerPoint up, anywhere you like, anywhere you like.
My battery life is gonna.
You gotta plug in right down there.
And it won't work.
Yeah, plug right
Plug right in.
We do have these handouts.
Oh,
right?
nice,
Should
thank
we-
you.
Should we hand these out?
Yeah, sure, and sorry for
Thank
the
you.
typo on there.
That's all right.
They're all individually.
Oh, they are. Oh, I got the right one there. And here, which one's here? You're not very Faith.
I read the first sentence, I thought it was done. I thought you did it.
There you go.
Thank you.
You must be back.
I'm done.
There you go.
Do you wanna do introductions again?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners and Rachel. Glad you could meet with us today. I'm Dave Larkins, the President of the newly formed Board of Directors for the Dorrance Heritage Center. And we're really excited about this project. It's gonna be a great opportunity to expose the dory fleet. It's a huge part of Oregon history. You know, it's pushing 100 and some years old now. I've been a doryman since 1971. And so I've seen a lot of changes in the dory fleet, but it kind of happened when Paul Hanneman died. We started feeling the need to preserve this piece of history. And what we're trying to do is not only create a really educational experience for people, but also a crown jewel for Tillamook County, for the coast here. So before I lose my train of thought, which I somehow frequently do, I would like to also introduce my team here, which is Bob Grummel, he's the treasurer on the board of directors, Linda Larkins, he's the secretary, and John Goodell, who's our professional consultant, who's had years of experience with museums. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to these guys for a while to fill you in on the details.
Okay.
I'm gonna start, I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm gonna start with a story. I've been volunteering with this group for the last 5 years, 7 years, since 2018. And we were originally gifted a site in downtown Pacific City. And the Dory community was very excited about that. Dave convinced me to do some volunteer work. I'm a structural engineer and civil engineer. And I convinced my friend Mike McCulloch, an architect, to work on that site together. And we developed plans to develop that site along with some of the costs. It was a very difficult site. It had wetland problems, floodplain problems. The site was small. And Mike and I have felt very strongly that we should be looking at other sites in the community. And we should be looking from this up above. And the first ones that came to mind were, down near Bobstrop Park, perhaps, or next to where the bridge goes across, where the new development just went in. And then the Jensen property next to the Cape Quantico Community Center. Well, we presented that to the Dory group, and there were some real hesitant feelings about it. And I'm not sure exactly where they came from, but got this site given to us by a family. We have to develop it. Do not go there, Bob and Mike. So we said fine, and we didn't go there. But I was still keeping my fingers crossed that something else would happen. And lo and behold, the county came forward and saw this as a great opportunity to build the museum next to the community center, next to a park. Well, Mike and I were just overjoyed, and the Dory community is now fully embracing it. The county has done a wonderful job of providing some services. The plans that have been put together today, that you'll see today, were done by Nosa Norma, an architectural consultant that the county paid for. And they did a fabulous job. And the drawings you'll see today are conceptual in nature. We're all detailed people, so they may look very detailed. But as we move forward, we will have a new architect, or maybe the same architect, do a very detailed plan that may change very differently. But the documents that you'll see here today are sufficient for us to move forward with fundraising, developing our 501c3
opening bank accounts, the board of directors now been created. We are in a position to move forward with this project. Another story, and I think, you know, we relate to stories. This guy didn't know until about 3 years ago, and he calls me and says, yeah, I'm thinking about building a boat, I saw your boat. And I sent him some pictures, and I think I told him to go look at my boat in the garage. And I didn't know that John Goodell was very involved in the High Desert Museum for many years. Now the executive director, I don't know his whole resume, but at the Falconry Museum in Boise, and has a tremendous amount of experience in exactly what we're doing. And guess what? He's become a doryman. You know, he built his own dory in his backyard, came down and launched it without ever going out in a dory before, and he's still breathing. He hasn't drowned, and he has a beautiful boat. I think, John, there's a picture of your boat in the presentation you should show real quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Just while I'm bragging on him.
There is.
But you know,
Nice.
it's really important. The dory community has a tremendous amount of enthusiasm for this museum. But having someone like John that helps usher us in the right direction, the right steps, is hugely important. And he's been instrumental in getting the plan together, which he'll be talking more about today. So I'm gonna keep rolling. But this is a great thing. So here's the site plan. Let's go to the site plan first there. So the museum will be located next to the community center. So there'll be this relationship that's already strong where they would love to have us, you know, next door. And then also the Jensen Property Park, which is another wonderful amenity of the community. So there'll be a new parking at the south end of the park. The Heritage Museum kind of sits back from the street, but it'll be a beautiful structure, so you'll get good visibility of it. We'll relocate the entrance from directly to the community center down this way. And then you'll come in and there'll be some new parking for the community center, and then 27 spaces for the Dory Museum. And then again, this is just the size of building that could suffice. And there's some property that's just an issue that the county's working with, that's kind of landlocked property that is owned by someone else, but Rachel can talk about that if you're interested. Let's go to and you know, we're thinking of just the architecture would be, you know, coastal timber, real similar to what you would expect to see on the coast. There would be, you know, dory boats outside as well as inside. And I don't know if anybody went to the Dory Days this year, but, you know, when we get this museum built, Dory Days, this place will just be a flood of people, tents and things being sold and dories and whatnot. Here's just a conceptual plan, an entry with gathering, you know, there's a desire for a gathering spot, a place to, you know, show films and whatnot, and the dory display, a boat shop. There's a whole history of all these wooden boats that are all over the community that are in disrepair. And if you go to the museum up in Seattle, that's what they do, is they repair old boats and build boats. So there'd be a boat shop and boat storage. So it's all part of the dory experience. And then on that second level, there'd be more displays, and there's a conversation about having controlled displays where you have controlled lighting and sound and whatnot, so you can go in and experience the new kind of stuff. And this is just the initial concept of 7,000 to 8,000 square feet. It'd include vestibule, reception, gift shop, which would, you know, on one or 2 days of the Dory event. We sold something like $14,000 in shirts, hats, and pullovers. Exhibit space, and there'll be, you know, exhibit for Paul Hanneman, who's, I know most of the people here know his story, and it's a huge part of the museum. And then the parking, arrival, ticket sales, all the things that you would need in a state-of-the-art museum. And our feeling is that there'll be a tremendous interest with all these people that are coming to the community, that are spending money, and definitely on the rainy days, they'll be congregating at the museum. Is that enough?
I don't care if you keep talking.
So
John, you wanna take it
yeah,
from there?
just a couple notes. I'll just stay here just so I can run this. But a couple notes about this. Okay, the actual operation. What is the program of this Envision Museum going to include? And we're thinking of a small staff of probably 2 full-time people with 2 to 4 seasonal or part-timers, and a large group of volunteer dorymen and associated family members who would help do a lot of the interpretive programs along with the day-to-day operations. So the programs would be adult to children, teens. We're thinking of like things like an apprentice, boat building courses and things like that could be done. Permanent exhibits would be the core focus. Would be the history of the fleet and the fishery, the history, really the nature of what is a dory and the evolution of the dory boat design. Some stories about people like Paul Hanneman and people like that. So some real narratives of some of the individual members and builders in the dory boat scene. And then beyond that, sort of, if you can imagine, that's the core permanent exhibit. Then there'd be this sort of outside of that, these not tangential but connected traveling or rotating exhibits that would be, say, rockfish natural history, or something about, say, Chinook life history or Chinook conservation. It could be a traveling exhibit of some of the photos that folks take of dory boats landing and launching. So there's an interest in balancing the permanent exhibit content with some rotating content that will keep it fresh and keep it new and keep people coming back, which I think is an important aspect of any museum these days. And then also, so that's really the exhibit side of things. But then there's also programs. So programs, like I said, would include, say, a kids program in the summer, an apprentice boat building program, a once a month maybe natural history, or dory boat history night or pub night. Maybe we could work with the community center to have a pub night where a speaker comes in from out of town, talks about boat building, or someone from the community talks about dory, something to do with dory history or dory building. And so you'd have a variety of programs, whether they're monthly or annual to daily, and then including interpretive programs. So the core element that, other than the exhibit work, would be your daily interpretive talks. So probably 3 to 4 daily interpretive talks. What is a dory? A talk about the history of the dorymen in Pacific City, and a talk about dory design, or a talk about the fish ecology of the near shore region of the Oregon's North Coast. So you'd have a pretty vibrant, and we're talking 10-minute talks, but so anytime a visitor goes in there, they're gonna probably capture at least 1 or 2 of those talks a day, and especially during the summer season when the talk tempo would be, your daily talks would be much higher in the summer than in the winter. And then the final aspect is the collection. So any museum that's focused on something like whether it's, in my case, the museum I work at now is a falconry heritage. We obviously talking a lot about falconry, but we have a falconry collection of falconry items and of books and of art. In this case, it's important, especially given that these are wood boats and they're perishable, that we would maintain a dory collection in perpetuity, and we would be the stewards of that. So no one else is going to be the stewards of the dory boats that are the historically important boats. So that would be a core element of this Envision operation, is to, at the minimum, steward a collection of maybe 20, or give or take a few, 15 to 20 boats that over time we would maintain and make sure that they were preserved. And then along with that, photographs, film, material cultural objects, things that from the Dorriman community that could be archived as a collection. So, and that collection would be available online, not just on site. So that just gives you, I hope, a little snapshot of, I think, what the program, exhibits, and collection are the core elements of this operation here. We've written a strategic plan that kind of outlines these initiatives and outlines really the next steps. And so the next steps for us is, we have to form the entity legally. We filed already at the state level. We're about to file at the federal level. We've created a framework for exhibits, collections, and programs that I've just discussed with you. We've developed an operations budget for post-construction year to year budget that we would expect, say, in the first few years of operation. We need to, of course, soon through fundraising, launch an outreach campaign, so social media manager, website, and we need to start going out into the community and fundraising as a board and through other grassroots means. And then, of course, finalizing the center's actual architectural design, construction budgets, and then really launch sort of a bigger construction budget related campaign. And then complete construction. So that's sort of the initiatives that form our strategic plan right now. And really, our next steps in the immediate future are to secure a grant writer, to identify and secure some of these grants at the state, national levels. Maybe discuss with you guys, which we can discuss later, is securing maybe a lease with Tillamook County or a letter of intent that we could discuss as we go forward to launch this program, to have some letter of intent or an understanding that this we're work together on this and then with the property in question. We put a website out there, as I mentioned, and really get going with this initial fundraising, which is really the establishment phase of the organization, so that we can start to raise money. And then, yeah, I think I've covered the rest of it here, but that's kind of where we're at. We're right at the precipice of basically forming legally, opening our bank account within a week or two.
I mean, everything you've talked about is happening right now, and by the end of the year, we'll all be in place where we'll be open for business to raise money and have an agreement with the county to assure we've got the property to build the facility.
That's exciting. Commissioners, do we have questions?
It's exciting. I mean, I'll just echo that. I mean, I have heard for a long time that there was gonna be a Dorriman's Museum and that it was just sort of this thing that floated around in the ether. So this is really fabulous to see where you all had taken this from the idea that there should be one to where you are today, which is on the cusp of establishing, the organization that will actually build and operate that museum. So kudos to all of you. That's an amazing body of work. So, yeah. Thank you.
So I'm fairly familiar with it. I've lived in City City for over 30 years. Ray Monroe's my next door neighbor. So I know pretty much what's going on. I've been involved with the Kiowanda Community Center and all that. And when the first piece of land came, first thing I said was to Ray is, you need to trade that and get this land over next to the Kiowanda. And that was before Faye Jensen, gave the land and things got where they are now. I said, because you're in a floodplain, you're gonna have some difficulties and you're gonna have a museum on the second floor and parking on the lower level or something like that. But so watching it evolve to this has been great. I think you'll get there, and I talk to Ray about this fairly often. He usually comes over at dinner time, and so we manage to feed him again, and sometimes he brings me crap, and so we work it out. But yes, you have something here that probably should have been there a long time. And I knew Paul Hanneman reasonably well too. And I'm not a doryman, but I've been fishing down there for 50 plus years, and mainly on the Nestucca and all of that. But so what you're doing here, in my judgment, is would have been nice, been done 30 years ago, but can't do that, so you do it today. And I think you'll get some major backers. I think just talking to people around. The bigger challenge, I think, just my opinion, would be keeping it going year to year to year. I think you can capitalize this and get some donations and build a beautiful building. But to keep it open, and I'm assuming you keep it open like 11 months out of the year, maybe close February or something like that. But and then once it gets going, then it sustains itself with the cash flow and all of that. So this is a project that, you know, I think it's absolutely great, and it will be a landmark, not only in Pacific City and Tillamook County, but around Oregon. So yeah, good for you, and I'm glad to see you got some horsepower behind it.
I think it's great. I think it's great work also. It's really very exciting, and I agree with Doug. I was very pleased when the change came to locate the museum on the Jensen property, because it just seems so much better for this project. And adjacent, the Kiwanda Community Center, it's perfect. And I'm just I'm impressed with the work that you've done, and I'm hopeful and encouraged about this as a destination and as a community gathering and community building place, because there's so much community pride about dory fishing and the history of dory fishing and what it means and how it came about and all that, and that fabulous play that Linfield did about the dory industry. I love that. I don't know if somehow you'll be able to incorporate some of that work, but it was it's just something really special and that doesn't exist anywhere else, and it deserves a museum. So good for you for doing it, and these renderings are beautiful. The drawings are beautiful. I'm excited about the project.
You know, you probably do Brenda and Ty Marshall.
My neighbors.
Yeah. So they have done so much too of you know, the history of Wayside Authority Days here. Last
I worked
weekend.
with them as I was the liaison on that project between the Doryman
Yeah.
and Linfield.
They did at the display they had at the community center this year was just over the top, just beautiful.
Yeah, well, I was a guy standing in the street up there on a truck with a microphone during a break.
Okay.
But so she gave me, Brenda did, she had like 12 pages all typed and bound, and about the whole parade and what was going on. I mean, she does all this stuff, and nobody asked her to do it, she just does it. She came out and handed this book to me and said, okay, here's the biography on the Grand Marshal and all this stuff. And, you know, so I mean, they're historians, and if you don't know who they are, she's a retired, well, they both worked at Linfield for 30 years, and she's a retired professor. She taught theater arts and maybe a few other things, and they did, a few years ago, they built had a play that came together over a period of maybe 4 or 5 years, different classes as they moved through the school, and it became the history of Doryman. And that was back when Paul Hanneman was around, and anyway, she developed all that, and then she would take the students, and that was part of the curriculum, was how to get up and do that thing. I mean, they're amazing people, and I had dinner with them the other night when they came over to fish with. So yes, you get the first team in here. So you're gonna be okay, and if you can raise the money, and you know, every so often I think, you know, what goes on in Tillamook County, you have your own opinions, and then I realize, you know, there is so many resources here, and there are people with money, there are people around that could write a check for this whole thing, you know, they wouldn't even know they wouldn't even miss the money. Yeah. So go find them.
We will.
So the next step with us, with the county, will be some kind of a letter of intent for the property.
That would be awesome, and we could put that in our fundraising packets.
Good.
So they know quick. I gotta add too that we would not have gotten this far without a TLT a grant that the county so graciously awarded us. And with Rachel's help and the county commissioners and my wife going into AFib while she was writing it, other than that.
Bless your heart.
But so thank you very much for that grant, because we wouldn't be anywhere, and offering us an alternative site, because it wasn't gonna work on that other site for various reasons, but this is awesome. I think we'll all have a good partnership going down the road.
I think so too.
We do understand you don't wanna build it or run it.
Right.
That's correct.
That's right.
Just come to it.
You know,
Just come and visit it. frequently.
but that brings up one little thing. So if you look at the site plan and we have a lot of money to raise and the Quanda corridor project will be coming forward, hopefully, maybe before us. But having the county perhaps do the utilities and help with the parking lot would really help the museum a lot. So it's worth saying that there's some work that you guys might be hiring those types of contractors to redo the road and redo the road up there, and doing that parking lot would just be easy squeezy.
I don't, yeah, I think we would entertain the idea of it, you know,
I'm just planting
especially,
a seed.
yeah, especially if there's the opportunity for in kind, you know, for something that the road department could do, yes, but I leave it up to Rachel.
Well, you know that the next thing that we are actively working on is the intersection, which doesn't really affect this. That section of the multi-use path is not in the foreseeable future currently, and the concept of, actually, can we go to the current? That's the old concept. Actually, hold here for a second. So this is the concept that's adopted, which shows a smaller footprint of the museum and a small expansion of the current Cape Kiwanis, or the current, I'm saying Cape Kiwanis parking lot too much, KCC parking lot, expanding to the south. Okay, so now go to the new concept.
Oh, this is.
So there it is right there.
So this one, and I shared this with you all earlier on, just to get your buy-in before it got too far. There's a new parking lot east of the building site. So the building itself got bigger and there's a new parking lot that's bigger in addition to the expansion. And so us building that is not currently in the plans.
Building this?
Yeah, that's all new. And so what they're suggesting is maybe that could be added into the county's portfolio, if you will. Additionally, beginning some of the infrastructure along Cape Kiwanis Drive.
Maybe.
Yeah, so yeah.
You were here for the end of our TLT increase conversation, right? So should we be successful in raising additional funds?
We're gonna
We
go for
might.
that extra 5%, you know?
Yeah, you're in for that campaign, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Got my buy-in.
And also, it will be a tourism facility, and we
Exactly.
regularly, you know, approve funding for tourism facilities.
Mhm.
So please work with Rachel on the timing of that.
Perfect.
Did any of you, well, you did, know Faye Jensen?
I
You knew-
knew who she was.
Yeah, she owned a good share of this, and she has three daughters, and I think they're all still around. One of them was pretty active in this, and that way back when gave rise also to the Cape Kiwanis Community Center. And then on the other side, if you go see where those little quadrangle things, those are vacation homes, and a good share of them are short-term rentals. And I forget the name of that development now. Do you know, what is it, Rachel?
Short Pine?
No, it's not Short Pine.
Is that Four Sisters over there?
Yeah, Four Sisters. And that was developed by Faye Jensen, and then she had other property from where the museum would be all the way down basically to Civic Avenue, which is the bridge and goes over to the beach. And there's about 3 or 4 homes, four homes are right on the front. You can see on Cape Kiwanis Drive that are not owned by the county now. And there were 2 little boxes in there that were acquired, right? Remember those, Rachel? There were 2 little, like there were 20 by 20 lots that somehow got platted out years ago.
There's four that were landlocked when we bought the
Yeah.
property. We've purchased 2. I'm still trying to acquire the other 2. The one that's to the leftmost box, I'm getting nowhere with. The one in between the Kiowanda Center and the Dora Museum site, I'm making minor headway on.
So there's a lot of interesting history there, but what you're doing, as I understand it, is you're free and clear and able to do that, and the parking will work. So really all you need.
That's right.
And I think you've got something now you can show. One of your guys needs to go on the road, and we need to take this down to the Multnomah Athletic Club in Portland, and after they've had 2 or 3 drinks, pass that.
That's right.
Come back with some money.
So it looks like you're planning to get started. I'm just looking at your budget that's in here for 24-25, and so do you guys have a timeline that is your dream timeline, recognizing that there's a lot of unknowns and moving parts in this early phase, but.
I think that budget there reflects sort of this establishment of the full capacity to actually grant writer outreach communications capacity. I think that would be sort of into getting that in full speed and applying for grants and putting things out into the community would be within from here to sort of a year from now. I think that a year from now would be that time to really have a more finalized architectural. We would start to try to pursue architectural concepts and look at different options and try to secure an architect and then come out to the community and to the partners with a more, I guess you could say, targeted campaign for construction. And I think that would be 26, 27, I think is ballpark what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Like ideally, putting the first shovel in the ground in 27 would be great. But I think that
And that'd be ambitious.
It'd be
That's
ambitious.
3 years, that'd be a lot of work to do.
Right.
But it might be more than that. The one thing I would say about this, I'm the director of a museum that has 35,000 people, maybe 45,000 people come through the doors every year connected to the Peregrine Funds World Center for Birds of Prey. And it's a little bit away from Boise and it does have interest and there is a good amount of school groups and people that come through, but we really can't operate off of that, for us, off of that admission income. Like the High Desert Museum operates almost fully off of their admission income, and this place will be, if it were to be built, it would be very viable from admission income alone because of the number of people in the area seasonally. And I think that's one of the things that's exciting, at least, is that if we can get it built, this sort of, there won't be as much of a dark cloud over, are we gonna get this grant this year? Are we gonna be able to do it? It'll be, I think, much more pencil out with respect to admission income, which will be keeping it small, keeping it under, say, 6 staff. I think that's a great potential for long-term viability.
What would it cost to get into this museum, would you say? What's the market?
Yeah, discount or free for kids under a certain age and seniors. And so I think High Desert is right now, of course, it's a much bigger museum, but they're at probably over 15. I think certainly like for an adult, maybe $12, somewhere in there. If you're thinking about, 80,000 people come through the doors, which is a conservative estimate, it could be much more than that, but that at a sort of average of say, $8 or $9 a person, averaging out across all, that could be enough to fully fund the operating costs that we've estimated for operating budgets.
I'm expected in another meeting.
Yeah.
So please continue. It's delightful to meet all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you.
Who's vice chair? Doug, you're finishing out the meeting.
Yes, well, I know Mr. Larkin and the others, it's nice to meet you, and I'll just say on behalf of the south end of the county, which is where I live, this is great. You guys.
Thank you.
And I think it's gonna happen, and whatever the county can do to help, we will, and we don't have tons of money, but we may have some influence, or we may have other things coming that way, and I'm a big believer for my part in cooperative arrangements and ventures and those kinds of things. And Rachel's been on this from day one, and she'll be around a lot longer probably than any of us, so keep on her good side for sure.
I will say that Rachel's been a big help.
Yeah, we all come and go, she stays.
That's right. And doing this feasibility study, having her help us get together with Noosa Norman, because they were already working on the project. That was huge for us because we didn't have to go out and find people to do all this stuff. It was there. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel.
This is exciting to see where you're at.
So, any other things you'd like to visit with the county about, or are you good?
I think we're good.
You know, what I would like for my part, why don't you come back about every 6 months and give an update and say, hey, you know, we ran into a roadblock, or we moved forward, and, you know, keep the county in the loop.
We'd be
We'd
happy,
be happy to do that
happy
if
to
you
do
want
that.
us. Yeah.
Somebody can come, make a report.
Might be doing it from down south, so.
Okay.
We'll work around it.
Thank you. Very good.
Thanks for
Thank
your
you
time.
guys very much.
Thank you for your time.
With that, let's get this TLT money rolling.
Well, you're a voter, so it's gonna be on the ballot.
That's right. Talk it up to your friends is a good idea.
That's right.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much.
No, we're being I see you.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to.
Is this your meeting?
Oh, your meeting is on Thursday. Oh, you done? Yeah.
Well, I guess so, yeah, it's 4 o'clock, I think.
Thank you. We're just finished up the meeting.
All right.
Did you just
Mike.
roll into town?
How are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to
I
see
got
you
a
too.
special visit.
Are we adjourned?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're adjourned.
We'll go up.
Oh, okay.